Hi there, Zam here for NerdTube, and these are my thoughts and spoilers of The Boys Diabolical on Amazon Prime. A little bit late to this party, but I'm really happy that I attended it because The Boys Diabolical is absolutely fantastic. The last time I kind of saw animated shorts was the Star Wars Visions on Disney Plus, which in my opinion kind of was a letdown simply because everything was Jedi related. They could have done stuff on fighters and smugglers and shit like that, the underground, but no, everything was fucking Jedi and Sith. It was a bit, repetitive, so to speak. But Boys Diabolical is definitely not that. Very unique stories. I thoroughly enjoyed majority of them. One or two possibly weren't that much of a hit for me, but overall, I love this particular series, and I can't wait for season 2. So let's talk about these episodes, shall we? Got a little slideshow going on here. First of all, we have Laser Baby Day Out. Now, this was a throwback to the cartoons of yesteryears. Definitely more of a Looney Tune vibe about it. We have this person, this professor here with the bow tie. You can tell he's like a scientist just because of the bow tie, who works for Vought, and he ends up getting a fondness for this young girl, this young baby girl, who is one of the experimental test subjects at Vought. Now, if you don't know this already, but Vought created the superheroes, and so they're doing tests on a new batch of superheroes, so to speak, babies. And because this particular scientist ends up getting a fondness for this girl, when he finds out that she could be terminated because she's not necessarily complying so well regarding the test results and shit like that, he goes about his way to save her, and then shenanigans ensue because we see all types of shit going on, and then we see lots of people getting killed in various ways. This girl has laser beams that come out of her eyes, and they usually tend to come out when she sneezes or coughs, but once she herself also has this bond with this scientist and looks at him as her dad, she ends up being quite protective of him and starts beaming her laser beams at everybody, and there's a lot of carnage, but it's all done in that Looney Tunes sort of vibe, and it's really, really good to watch. Thoroughly enjoyed this episode. Brought me back to yesteryear, but also kept it very adult in its content. Fucking loved it. If I was going to mark this one out of 10, I'd give it an 8. Okay, on to the next cartoon. And that is animated shorts where pissed off soups kill their parents. Now, these superheroes, or they're not really superheroes, they're just called soups. They have useless powers. One guy just happens to be really big. This person here is just a tongue, and so it's just one big muscle. This black dude here is like a flashback guy. He can see flashbacks. This girl, transparent. She can go through things, but she can't hold anything, and she can never eat anything, even though she doesn't need to eat anything. She's always hungry because she hasn't eaten. So she's kind of useless in that sense. This guy here with the crotch is probably one of the better superheroes, regardless of his powers. He's got like radioactive, toxic bollocks. The guy with the Mohican, he can turn into any animal, but not only does he turn into the animal, he ends up having the mindset of the animal, so he can end up being kind of docile and stupid. This person here's got tits for face. I forgot what this guy here with the glasses has, but I'm sure it's useless too. So all these people who are experimented on by Vought have superpowers which are no good, and their parents disown them, and so they decide to get their own back on their parents. And they do. And they murder their parents. It's kind of simple, really. It's fucked up, but then again, you realize how terrible their parents are, because these kids were not adopted. These kids are the actual children of their parents. They're not adopted. They were given superpowers by Vought. They injected them with Compound V. And because they didn't turn out to be like a Homeland or anything along those lines, their parents rejected them and gave them up for adoption, so they wanted payback, and they ended up killing their parents. It's actually a very, very funny episode. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would also give this an 8 out of 10, possibly 9, because the dude here with the killer crotch, he teabagged somebody to death, and I know a lot of people who are into teabagging, and so they would very much appreciate that, as much as I did, tell you the truth. Episode 3 is called I'm Your Pusher. We get some familiar characters in this episode. We have here Billy Butcher and Frenchie. Billy Butcher, he meets up with a drug dealer or superheroes, and he basically persuades this drug dealer to give a sort of deadly dose, a fucked up dose of super drugs to this particular new superhero, who is a guy who can fly really, really fast. And the reason being that Billy Butcher's doing this is because this particular superhero tried to have a threesome in the skies, but by doing so, that superhero ended up killing the two girls he was trying to have a threesome with because they froze to death. And because of that, and Billy Butcher being the vigilante that he is, he wants some payback for that particular incident. We do see this superhero who can fly really fast. I'm sorry, his name escapes me, but he ends up taking this bad dose of drugs, and he kind of embarrasses himself when being introduced to the public by Homelander and Queen May and Jupiter, I believe, as well. This superhero I'm not familiar with, and this flying super fast superhero does all types of craziness. You can see that he's fucked out of his face and he's acting very erratic, and then he starts flying around really quickly, and he ends up like passing through the body of a superhero who's very like tank-like, but because he's going so fast, he's able to penetrate that person's body, but by doing so, he crushes his own. So he killed one superhero, possibly killing himself at the same time. And then the end of the episode happens with Homelander pointing to the skies and pointing to the sunlight, saying that, oh, look, a supervillain's coming our way. We have to deal with this. He's possibly the person who's doing this, and because they're pointing to the sun, the people can't see what's going on. It's all just made up anyway, so it's just a bunch of bollocks. It's just basically Vought and the supers basically covering their backs after this terrible particular incident. Very good episode. I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10 as well. This episode was surprisingly good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's called Boyd in 3D. Basically, it's about this dude here in the black who's like a bit of a Johnny Bravo sort of character, but he can get the chicks. He gets experimented on by Vought to use this sort of facial gel, so to speak, and you can end up looking and designing your body the way you want it to be. And by doing so, he ends up hooking up with his next door neighbor, who is a chick he's attracted to. She ends up using some of that gel as well, not realizing what it is, and turns herself into some sort of sexy feline type of girl. They become very popular in social media, but over the years, they end up starting to reject each other and do sort of crazy shit. As you see from many people who are famous couples, they're pretty cool as a couple, but then you start seeing some and hearing some terrible stories about them, and these people are no different. It's hard to say exactly what happens in this episode by the end, because we are mainly following it from the dude's perspective to a degree, and then we kind of get back to a position where he's sitting on the chair where he initially gets this sort of gel to put on his face, but his face now looks really haggard, and then his face blows up. It was very weird. Still, nevertheless, enjoyed this episode. It was crazy, and it kind of shows how artificial the world is, and 1 minute you're on top and then no one gives a fuck about you. I think that maybe that was the message it was trying to portray. Still excellent episode. I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10, maybe 8. Maybe I should. I'll give it 8 as well. Actually, I did enjoy this one. This one was pretty good. All right, BFFS. This is a weird episode. I mean, this particular episode is portrayed in the anime style, and this person here, her name is Sky. She has a couple of sort of like sorority princesses taking the piss out of her and using her because she's a new kid on the block, and they want her for her money and stuff like that. So and because she's got no friends, she decides to hang around with them anyway. She ends up doing getting some drugs from this drug dealer for her sorority friends, and by doing so, she also accidentally or purposely gets some compound V from him as well. He never actually tried to intentionally give it to her. Some of it kind of slipped out of his suitcase, and she just nabbed it. She goes home and decides to drink it, and she gets a superpower. and we don't exactly know what it is initially, but she something within her body starts speaking to her, and then she lets out a fart, and this fucking turd with one eye and a bow comes out, and it's very friendly towards her and stuff, and she basically becomes friends with her with the shit that just came out of her. Now the Deep is kind of like the villain of this episode as well, and he's involved in this episode in some capacity, and we do have a showdown in the sewer between Sky and the Deep, and we find out that Sky's power is actually that she can control shit just in general. So there's all this shit everywhere, and she brings it to life like this shit which is in her hand, and it starts attacking the Deep, and the Deep wants nothing to do with it, and he just gets the fuck out of there. It's a stupid episode, a little bit fun. I'll give this episode it's between a 6 and a 7 for me. It kind of saved itself near the end. I'll give it a 7. It's okay. Okay, this is a brilliant episode. This is Nubian versus Nubian. So these two characters on either side of this kid in the middle are the parents of this kid, and this guy here, he's like a Black Panther type character, and the woman on the right, his wife, she ends up being is like Storm from the X-Men, and you see them dishing out some punishment to a super villain who is voiced by I forgot the name of the guy, but he does Bender in Futurama, and he also does Marcus Phoenix in Gears of War. I recognize that voice anywhere. Unfortunately, the name escapes me, but nevertheless, they beat the fuck out of him. They fall in love, and then we cut to 8 years later, and now these two are bickering and stuff, and they've got this cute little girl as their daughter. And this girl then realizes that possibly that her parents need to have somebody to fight against so that they can fall in love with each other again. So she meets up with the super villain who has the voice of the guy from Gears of War to do another battle with these two so her parents can get back together again. And he agrees eventually, because she kind of blackmails him to do it, so to a degree, by basically saying that I'll call you a pedophile if you don't fucking do it. And so he kind of gets roped into doing it, and then her parents beat the fuck out of this guy. And we also find out that initially, the first time round, that when her parents were fighting him, that it was all staged and scripted by Vought. So it kind of makes you realize how artificial the superhero world is to a degree. But this time round, it's not staged or scripted by Vought. It's staged and scripted by this girl. But the parents take it too far, and they end up beating the shit out of that dude. And they get back together again, and things seems to be hunky-dory for a little while, until, like, old habits come back again, and they start pissing each other off. And then the daughter realizes maybe it's better that my parents get divorced, and that's how that episode ends. This is a good episode, actually. Very funny, very ironic at times. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Lots of 8s today. Pretty good. Alright, this is my least favourite episode of the lot. I didn't enjoy this episode that much. It's John and Sun Hee. It's kind of trying to tug on the heartstrings a little bit. John here, and his wife are an elderly couple, and his wife is dying of cancer. He works for Vought as a janitor, John does, and he's able to smuggle some Compound V because he believes, that this superhero medicine, this superhero stuff, will save his wife. And then when he does inject her with it, the sort of like, you can see what's coming out of her. This is actually the cancer inside coming out, and it fucking kills everyone and stuff like that. Eventually the cancer leaves her body entirely, and it becomes its own entity, and it becomes a deadly entity in the woods, and it's just basically absorbs things. It's a bit like a parasite. Good way of describing it. And the wife, who's still got the superhero powers in her as well, ends up fighting it, and basically tells her husband, make sure you do the sort of things I tell you to do while we were together. Make sure you do it, because I believe she was basically saying to her husband, I ain't coming back from this. I'm going to give up my life trying to kill this monstrosity. And it's trying to be a very sentimental episode and all of that, but I wasn't feeling it too much. Had a couple of good moments, but overall, not my favorite episode of the series. I'm going to give this one a generous 5 out of 10. And finally, this is like a prequel of sorts. This particular episode, it's like Homelander doing his first mission. He's been. They mentioned Soldier Boy very briefly, and now Homeland is kind of like the new face of Vought, and he's going to be there to stop atrocities. And there is a hostage situation going on at this chemical plant, but we can understand from the point of view of the hostages quite early on that this chemical plant is fucking people over with its chemicals. You know, people are getting mutated, people are getting sick, which is why there's a hostage situation there in the first place. But Homelander is going to go in there and try and stop it. He's also being watched by Black Noir, and he's kind of jealous of Black Noir, and he feels that Black Noir is going to take his spotlight. But as we all know, that's not really what Black Noir is all about. You know, he's a watcher. You know, he's not there to be in the spotlight. He's there to be in the shadows. Nevertheless, Homelander tries to stop. You know, he tries to be very Supermanish. You know, he doesn't kill anyone initially. He's trying to stop them. But being, you know, this super-powered person, he ends up accidentally killing a hostage by burning up a gun with his laser beams, and the gun explodes, killing the hostage that the gun was pointing at. Even though the gun was not going to fire and stuff, but nevertheless, it killed the hostage. And now Homelander has accidentally killed the hostage. He starts having flashbacks of his time when he was being tested and so on, and he loses his shit pretty much and ends up fucking killing everybody, the terrorists, the hostages, the fucking lot. And then he sees Black Noir seeing him, and he feels that Black Noir is going to oust him, and so he tries chasing Black Noir around, and by doing so, the whole fucking chemical plant ends up getting blown up by Homelander. One person survives, and Homelander believes that Black Noir is going to save this person and basically bring Homelander to justice, so to speak. But nope, Homelander kills this person and writes a note to Homelander, and we obviously know that basically Black Noir is like a cleaner. He's just covering up for all the fuck up, so to speak. You know, he is definitely and we also know that he's under the thumb of Edgar, the guy from sorry, his name escapes me, Esposito or whatever his name is. Yeah, that guy. He's his boy, so he's obviously under orders, and he's making sure that Homelander obeys orders as well. Alright, I'm starting to stutter a little bit now. But basically, this episode kind of ends with Homelander understanding his place, and he's basically there just to follow orders and be a face and stuff like that. And if anything fucks up, someone like Black Noir is going to clean up and stuff like that. But overall, they're just trying to, Vought is just trying to make money out of soups and stuff like that, and they want a clean-cut, good-looking blonde white boy like Homelander to be the face of their company. Kind of, basically, that's it, really. Alright, I babbled on as much as I can about this. This episode gets a 7 out of 10 for me. Very good episode. Kind of enjoyed it. Kind of showed you that Homelander was on the right path, so to speak, but he's just a fuck up. And he's just too powerful and strong for his own good, and he doesn't know when to be gentle and when to, like, let it all off. He just doesn't know the differences and the balances and stuff like that. Doesn't realize that people are very vulnerable to his powers, and he ends up doesn't realize that that even the people he's trying to save, he's likely to kill them because he's just too heavy-handed. Alright, that's my review of The Boys Diabolical. Fantastic series, 15-minute episodes, nice small morsels, doesn't overstay its welcome whatsoever. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Some of the best animation I've seen in a while. Let me know what you think of it. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to NerdTube, the greatest YouTube channel you never heard of. Bye bye.